Shall we have the pledge of allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So if these two people aren't gonna show up, they're probably screw it up because it was supposed to be.
Okay, before we start, I don't know if most of you, one of our former chairmen of our planning and zoning passed away, Melvin Johnson, he was back 44 years ago, I know he was chairman when I was here. He was our second chairman here. He took over for Harvey because Harvey thought he was better qualified than him. And Melvin was a professor down at the University of Minnesota. Did you know him? You knew him, did you?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And after he retired, he moved up around Isle or Malacca or something. Anybody want to look at his obituary?
No, he owned, the bake shop in Isle.
Okay.
Yeah, right where 27 hits, 47 up there, you know, comes across through there. And,
See,
yeah,
Paul-
and his son is still got the bait shop.
Paul Johnson lives just down there where the big barn is and across from Stanky's down there.
Yeah, and then he built that house right across over here that, they want, what you call them, uses for the party house.
Okay, let's just have a moment of silence. Remember Melvin then. Thank you. The next thing we're gonna do at this time is, have a roll call.
Okay. Dale Ames,
Present.
Kelly Carroll. Present. Robert Schiller,
Yep.
Barry Wagner. Jason Alders,
Here.
Harold Jorgensen.
Here,
Jeff Pilon,
Here.
Liz Stockman. Here.
Okay, would you, well, policy, we don't have, there's nobody here. Meeting policy, do you wanna read that?
Please register your attendance on the sign-in sheet on the back table. Copies of the agenda are also available on the back table. The agenda as printed or amended will be followed, so all necessary and needed actions by the Planning and Zoning Commission will be addressed. The agenda may be amended by proper motion. Comments from the floor are welcome during public hearings. Those wishing to comment must register on the floor comment sheet on the back table. When comments from the floor are made, individuals must be recognized by the chairman. Clearly state your name and address for the record, and allow no more than 3 minutes to state your comments or concerns. Please turn all cell phones off or on silent. Thank you.
Okay, the next thing we're gonna do is, we need a motion to approve or amend tonight's meeting minutes of January 24th, 2020.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to add one item to the agenda if I could.
Okay,
Item 3, and then we'd move updates to item 4. I'd like to add subdivision ordinance standards regarding street construction.
streets and what?
Street construction.
Street construction. Okay, including this in the motion. Somebody wanna make this motion? I so move. Anybody second it?
I'll second it.
Okay, Commissioner Carroll seconded. Have any discussion? Any discussion on this motion? If not, we'll call for the vote. Everybody in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next thing we'll do is approve the planning and zoning meeting minutes, October 22nd, 2019. So we want to make this motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Made by Commissioner Alders and second by Commissioner Schiller. Okay, the next thing we'll do is open our public hearing. Public hearing's open. And the way I understand, he's not here tonight, he's not gonna be here. This is for James Hazeman, pin number 27-33-25-23-007 at 19350 Jasper Street for approval to vacate a portion of the existing drainage and utility easement separating two lots which have been legally combined to allow construction of a new home and septic system. Okay, well, I'll call on our planner to give a description of this, and
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Mr. Easman had owned two lots in Myrtle's second edition, and he combined them legally through county action and wants to vacate a portion of the one easement that was between lots 2 and 3 in that addition to build a new home and place his septic system. This is the drawing that he submitted for building permit. His new home and the septic system would be basically on what was the lot line. So just the front portion of this easement's being vacated. The rear portion from the 100-foot wide drainage easement to the rear will still be in place. And the city engineer has reviewed and approved that description. So we just require a resolution to be recorded stating that the city council approves the vacation and that it's no longer needed for public use. So you have a findings of fact and the city council has a resolution.
now, I take it the county's already okayed this, right?
He combined the two lots, yes, so it's just a simple request at the county to combine the lots, and that has already showed up on the Anoka County GIS map. So that's been done. So they are legal, a single legal lot of record now. And so the final step is to vacate this part of the easement so he can construct his septic system where he wants to.
And the easement's no longer valid because it's one lot.
Right, correct. Those easements are always attained when the lots are platted so that the city can access back to that utility easement if they need to, or back to the drainage easement. And that utilities can be placed in those side lot lines. But since he's got, if you can see on the drawing how the easement's still across the remaining sides, including the side along Jasper and over the large drainage easement. So we still have 10 feet on all sides to get back there if we ever needed to.
What reason would we want to have them keep this easement on the property? Nothing really, right? There's nothing there, it's just field.
Right, there's nothing
There's no
in
reason.
the easement.
There's no
right
reason
now.
to have it there.
There's no utilities in it, and,
When it was two lots, there's potentially.
Right, yep.
for it,
No,
But now that it's
exactly.
one lot, it's,
But as of now, it's
Yeah.
just more of a pain in the ass than anything else, so.
yeah, he just wants to be able to use the property free and clear without worrying about where he puts a, structure, if he wants an accessory building or the septic.
And the lay of this land, that's like the only high spots.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, no,
Yeah,
it should be
it's-
gone, I think so
it's
too. It's,
Really low back there, on the backside.
so we looking for a motion or something, or what?
Well,
Yeah, we'll just approve our.
first of all,
findings.
I'm gonna ask the clerk if the legal publications, mailings, and posting have been completed.
Yes.
Okay, and, has the public got anything they want to put into it? Okay,
Seeing none?
seeing none. Should we close the public hearing? And then we'll act upon it.
I'll make a motion to vacate the easement.
And I'll second it.
Okay, we'll call for the Commissioner Alders made a motion, Commissioner Schiller seconded it. Now we'll call for the discussion. Any further discussion on this?
Well, that means he's gonna put a mound system in there then, definitely then.
Could be.
Depends what the soil says.
Yeah, but if it's right in the ditch, you
It's not a
know
ditch.
it.
There's no
It's
ditch
a
there.
top
If
of
you-
hill.
If you look at the Google picture or
It's a top of
whatever it
the
is,
hill.
Yeah,
it's right here.
yeah, but it's still lows.
If they're tilling it, it's probably not low.
No, you can't till that in there.
Okay.
Not down in there where he's talking about, that's pretty down.
At the
there.
top of the hill across from Murdoll's driveway.
Yeah, but it's still pretty wet in there, it's all wet in there.
But it's the
you're
soil
right.
probably will tell.
We've made some real boondoggles out of some of these easements. Because when they put septic in some of these, good examples on Lyle Lots up here. They ripped out all those tiles up there, and a lot of them places up there, those lots don't drain at all like they used to. I've got one right across the road from me, and there's a little lake over there, and the water comes underneath the road, mind you, it seeps through. And it floods right down by my barn. Because Leo DeShaney, when he put the sewer in there, he ripped out all the drain tiles. And we've had some really nasty deals, and I can't use probably 2 or 3 acres because of stupidity of our people, you know? But that should have never been approved.
I don't know if this is a history lesson, but I think we got a motion and we got a second, so.
Yeah.
We'll call for the vote.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, I guess we'll turn it back over to our planner.
Mr. Chair. But, Mr. Jorgensen, you understand that he wasn't vacating the large drainage easement though, correct?
No, he isn't doing that, but.
Yeah, okay.
But I've seen a lot of water in there come right up to the road though. When we get a good big rain, you know.
Oh, and along his property?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You can go swimming in there.
Well, it's up to his septic designer to find a spot that doesn't flood.
Yep.
Are you gonna
Okay, thank you.
cover lesticles?
Yes. or-
Okay,
You want to open the public hearing?
Huh?
Open the public hearing?
no, we have to open it as a public hearing.
Yes, we
then
have to
table it.
open the public hearing.
Okay,
Yep.
we'll open the public hearing for lesticles, let's see, have to read what it says here. Request by Lesticle Estate number 9-33-25-34-0002, and also 09-33-25-34-003, and also 9-33-25-33-008 at 21413 Nalden Boulevard to subdivide 3 existing lots into 4 parcels for the purpose of distributing land among family members and separating the farmstead from the balance of the land. This public hearing is to be continued meeting March 24th, requested of applicant.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
The applicants didn't feel as though they were prepared for the meeting and they wanted to chat about some of the engineering comments. So they've asked that we table it till March 24th. They've waived all time requirements as under the 60-day rule. And they have asked that we not discuss anything without them present. Since there's no public here for the hearing, we don't have to worry too much. I did explain to them that if there was public present, we would have to take their comments. So we can just make a motion to continue this to March 24th, unless you have any questions. I was going to go through a few things, but at their request, I won't do that until they're present.
Here?
So, we're looking for a motion then to continue the meeting,
Correct.
March 20.
Continue the public hearing to
March
the next meeting, right?
A motion to continue it on March 24th.
I'll second that.
Kelly, you second it? Perfect.
Chairman Schiller, he made the motion, it was seconded by Commissioner Pearl. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say yea. Yea?
Yay?
Yay.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Motion carried. Okay, then we'll turn it back to our planner again.
Okay, so the item regarding streets that I added to the agenda is just a short discussion about the street construction requirements in the subdivision ordinance. When we get these smaller lot splits or small plats, we've had some, well, the ordinance requires that all new streets be paved. And as you know, all new lots have to have frontage on a public street. And in the last probably 5 years, we had, our efforts were to try to eliminate the use of flag lots only under special circumstances, which is great. But there's a lot of pressure from applicants and residents to install streets that are either not paved or, or otherwise requesting flag lots. It's just challenging, and I want to be sure that
They're trying to do a flag lot, so they don't have to pave as much into the development, right?
right, it's costly. Like if you're only subdividing one lot or two, it's costly to put a street in. You have to have all the drawings that go along with it for the engineer to review. And then, in order to build that to standards is costly, and people don't want to do it. We tend to look for ways around it. It's not good. I mean, I'd like to treat everybody the same, and move forward, being comfortable with what our standards are, and just to tell people, no, if you can't build a street, then you can't do it. But, it's gonna come up again in this Lystico subdivision. And I don't wanna get into too much of it because they're not here. But when you're, when you have, in this case
I'm
too,
assuming the previous applicant would like to not pave it, right?
yeah, there's a.
Along with everybody else.
Yeah, it's hard, and it is expensive, but if you're not gonna sell lots and you're only splitting to,
Yeah.
for a family member or whatever, it's hard, and I get a lot of pressure too from the city engineer to just tell people, no, it's not gonna happen. We have a long history, I guess both ways. We have examples in the city where we have required the extension of cul-de-sacs for a 1 or 2 lot split, and we also have examples where we felt that maybe a flag lot was warranted, and we do allow for that. I mean, we don't have to feel bad about a flag lot necessarily in a dead-end type situation. But we also have situations where we only accepted the right-of-way and not the street being built. If the, street really didn't go anywhere yet, so it's just something I want you to start thinking about, and I think it's gonna possibly, when we do some of our ordinance updating, following the comp plan adoption, which is coming up very quickly here, we can talk more about this.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking about this revising or talking about the revision of some of the requirements, some of the issues that come up are because the land is not adequate to sustain a road. For tar, gravel, anything, we've got a lot of issues right now in the city with the gravel roads not being maintained enough anyways. So how do we get it from the city and from residents to upkeep these roads that are not, they're rough to travel on as they are right now with the current conditions we have, that we already are grandfathered into because that's what our conditions are. With
Right.
gravel roads and with the tarred roads that are breaking down and having issues and we're not being able to repair. So, I mean, that's what you're talking about in the long run here, is this is what they're not wanting to do the tar so that it's possibly cheaper for them to put the road in, possibly cheaper for maintenance thereon following.
Yes and no. I mean, there's maintenance both ways. But mostly what I'm referring to is, well, because if the city wants to require a public right-of-way, we would make sure at the time that it's constructed properly. In other words, the underlying soils, if they're dug out, if they have to be, it doesn't go through a wetland, you know, and it meets all those standards. There's a reason for those standards. But yes, I mean, the city council's well aware that maintenance is expensive. They're working on trying to kind of catch up to, you know, from some previous lack of maintenance and over the years, and I think they've made some good headway here recently. So, but what I'm referring to mostly is that if we allow a street to go in, or we waive somebody's right, in other words, we let them split a lot without a street and say, okay, next time, the next lot that develops, they're the ones that have to pave the street or build the street, then that burden is on the next person. And part of what the city engineer is saying relative to this current subdivision is that these streets need to go to the border of the current property, because, for instance, if the road out on Denali Boulevard is part of Leistico's division, you know, the county limits where those roads can go. So then if someone to the north or south of them develops, we're kind of stuck because there's nowhere to connect to, you know what I'm saying? So we don't want to, it's just a matter of sort of a progression of the street frontage typically should follow the lot widths and just keep going and going. And if there's a temporary cul-de-sac, I mean, there's a purpose for that, right? There's a purpose that it is just temporary, and that when the next lot comes, the street is extended a little more across the frontage of the next lot. So we just don't want to hurt ourselves either from a city perspective and get stuck with just right away, and then the city has to pay for building roads. You know, it's really the property owner's responsibility, or who's ever doing this subdividing. That's kind of the way it's intended. And then once it's built to the city standards, the city accepts it and maintains it. So anyway, I don't know if there's any other just off the cuff thoughts right now, but it's complicated, and it's particularly so in a city like now then that's kind of transitioning from very rural to more suburban. But, you know, I guess the best thing to do is to, when we get to the point, to change our ordinances so that we match what the comp plan says. That's what state law requires us to do. we can talk about this with the city council.
Is there a recommendation? I mean, should we be looking at, if it's a subdivision of less than X homes, it can be unpaved surface. If it's more than X homes, it's gotta be paved, or what's the,
Yeah, and that's a good example, is if you would or would not allow a gravel surface for a small split. City engineer says no way. I don't know. It's
Who's
up
to
you.
say it's a small split if it's a mile-long shared axis that accesses 4 driveways? Now, is that small?
No, we
It's
wouldn't,
accessing
we wouldn't
4
allow
driveways.
that, see, because,
That's
That's a
what I'm
bunch of
saying,
flag
is
lots.
that
Right.
there's other parameters.
so there's, right, you've gotta have frontage on a publicly dedicated street.
and
You
do we
could
mandate
contr-
that it's a paved road even if it comes up to a gravel road?
Well, we've had situations there, I think, where we've waived requirements in the past, because, yeah,
If you go back in history, quite a number of years ago, we required all roads to be paved in now then. And then there was a couple of individuals that got the rules changed to benefit themselves.
well, the rules really aren't changed though, Harold.
Oh, yes, they got changed, definitely,
There was an
because they let
exception.
it go through.
There's
Oh,
some
and then-
exception?
And then it got
Yep.
changed
They didn't
back.
necessarily change the rules, but the roads got in.
The roads got in and they got, at least they got put in and nobody monitored it, but we coulda did it, what we should have done was every time our roads needed more gravel, we should have been charging the homeowners for the gravel. And then it wouldn't have been so lucrative to get this done, see? You know, as far as, you know, keeping them gravel, but we actually were our own worst enemies because we didn't do anything. Now, like on Jasper and 185th, we paid for that road 100%. And we were given money by the county to tar them roads and bring them up to standards. And the present board we had at that time went and blew it on something else. And that was when they originally did Old Viking. And there's some of our roads that had this elm juice and maple sap and you name it put onto it one summer. And we had a lot of rain right after they put this on there, but it was for dust control. And it was just a terrible amount of rain. And so then they had to come along and put gravel over the top of this to absorb all this, to, you know, make something of it. And, so they put the gravel down there and they made it two loads wide. And right through the middle, you had a foot of water. And Randy was grading roads out there on a Sunday morning, as a matter of fact, because you couldn't even get through with 4-wheel drive. But now those roads that got all that maple sap and stuff, they haven't broke up like the rest of them. And that 185th, if you look at that, for the amount of truck traffic that has had on it, it has held up remarkably well. But there's a lot more than 4 inches of gravel on that road. That got a double dose is what it did. And there's a lot to be learned about that, you know. Because originally when I lived on 185th, in the spring, you didn't drive down it in places. You just couldn't do it. And I know the milk truck come in there one time and they had 5 tractors on it, pulling it out of the mud. And you don't go, you know, when you have situations like that, but they put enough gravel in that thing and it got it built up. And it does not have, you know, the heaving that it does in other places. But now you go further on down to the east, I went down today and that's got quite a bit of this. You know, this year we've got more of that heaving than ordinary.
Right.
Yeah. But if we would, on that gravel business, I think if we made the people pay for that gravel and they could see, hey, that's money going out again and again, maybe we should have tarred that. But we could, you know, you gotta fuel the fire a little bit there. But if you're gonna pay for it for them every time, nothing will ever get done, you know, as far as, you know, they don't wanna do it. And that's some of the problems. But I have noticed there's different areas and it all depends on how deep the hard pan is. In the hard pan, if it's real dry, the water can't get through it. If it's real wet, it's a mud hole. And I've had fields where I've plowed on and you go up to the top of the hill and you'll fall in right at the top of the hill. And you couldn't imagine it being wet. And down at the bottom, close to the ponds, you could drive all over. So it's a strange, bunch of soil is what it is.
Yeah, definitely is difficult soil. We still have a clause in the ordinance too that reads, the council may vary or modify these regulations in harmony with the general intent and purpose of the regulations.
That shouldn't be in there though.
No, I don't think so either, and this might be what you're referring to, but, the city council may at its discretion construct city streets, the cost of which is paid from the city road and bridge fund at variance to the provisions herein, provided said streets are in areas rural in character.
And there is some that were put in that there's not even any ditches to speak of. And the drainage is real poor. Go down in Ford Brook Edition down there in the spring, and you'll find a lot of that road it'll test your patience. And if you don't have a ditch to go in, and see now the county's gonna update Cleary Road too, and that's because of drainage problems. And I don't believe that road is even been ever surveyed so they know where it is, because I think they said in the papers, 47 different landowners involved on that one. That they're gonna have to buy the property on that to fix that road. And I'm not just sure how far they're gonna go on it. Some of it looks pretty good yet, and some of it looks terrible, so.
They're gonna fix some of the drainage, they're gonna mill and overlay this summer.
So now the piece towards the north end looks quite a bit better than the south end. And
And most of the drainage is on the south and middle.
yeah, there's quite a few ponds in there, and
Yeah, they're going from 66 up to 90. I mean, from 47 up to 90 and 66.
yeah, that's the worst piece. And the piece that's further north, that seems to be in better shape.
So Liz, what exactly are you saying here? I mean, I don't know what you're expecting the commission to do. It seems like you're kind of preparing us for when we have this next public hearing in March, that this is gonna be an issue. Am I interpreting that right?
A little bit, yeah, because I do believe that Lysico's intent may be to leave it gravel. Now, we have other situations, now I can't swear by that, but, we talked a little bit about, ways to minimize the length of the cul-de-sac in the subdivision proposed. But, no, just generally speaking, over the past few years, I've seen it come up more times, on the backside, not necessarily in front of the commissions or council, but just working with people, I see it as an issue, and I just wanna be sure everybody's on the same page moving forward, and if there are any changes, it's a good time to make the changes while we're doing other ordinance amendments. I'm not suggesting that you have to do anything.
There should be a limit on the amount of times they have to go back and rebuild some of these, so. Because we've got some real poor engineering on some of that. And, I'm not, this is necessarily saying it was the developer or the engineering people, but the end result has been terrible,
Well, right, I mean, we can learn a lot from our past.
Yeah, over there on, what is it, Willow Creek or whatever it is, Willow something, that Bowers put in on the Smith place. Some of them have been tore up 3-4 times. And the DNR even lied about how that was put in there. They said that pond was there for years and years. And I remember when they dug the first pond there and they took the dirt out for the greenhouse. That's it was looking in the middle of the winter, you couldn't find dirt that year, so they dug the dirt out of there, and now that water all seeps underneath that. And every year, it breaks up, you know, and we need to get rid of that water, is what it needs to be, because it's quite close to the ground level, is what it is.
The ditch isn't maintained from there down past your place.
Yeah,
The first time we fixed it 10 years ago, the first thing Joe did was dig the ditch out of the pasture there next to Hal's old place.
well, that ditch has been in there many, many years.
Yeah, but it was plugged up,
Oh, different spots in there.
and all the water was standing either side of the road.
Yep, it's all the way down through there, as a matter of fact, in the Ward place. And then it goes down into right across from the greenhouse, and then it goes east, see? And then it goes, eventually it crosses there and heads, you know, to the Rum River, is where it goes. But, I've pulled quite a few people out of that road down there at different times. You know, come out there and go over into Wards, into the drink over there. There was one the other day that come out too fast and he couldn't stop on the ice and he went over to Oomp.
So are we looking for some discussion on, do we look at our current ordinances, or is this a table, something we're gonna table, or
We don't need any action on it.
the previous slide was what our current ordinance state for roads?
But I think it would be just good for the city council as a whole, that if we do it cheap, we've got a cheap job. And if we spend the money that's required, they'll last 20 years, you know. And I think they should get a minimum of 20 years out of most of those roads.
Well, the problem isn't anymore what we put in for roads, because we have road standards now, which didn't exist when some of these
Oh,
parcels were put in. I mean, it's field dirt,
Yeah.
it's not road base.
yeah, it's just dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Technology
dirt.
has changed, right?
Yep.
So that part's changed. The bigger question that I think Liz is bringing up here is, if somebody's gonna divide out, do we make them blacktop out to the road?
Even for one lot or two lots.
I think that's, we go
Well, if the
south
road
of
goes
Nelson on
someplace.
5, right? If
What's that?
we just last year, that guy had 2 lots, or it looks like his kids built 2 houses there. If that land would have been split some different way, he would have had to pave a road for those 2 homes, right? And the
Well,
way it
here-
worked out, it didn't need to, but we're talking about somebody's dividing up potentially their 1 lot into 2, and they're gonna put a home back there, or 2 homes back there, and they gotta pave a road all the way back there.
Right.
That's a scenario. Or they come and ask for an exception with the flag lot, so they only have to do a cul-de-sac right off the main road.
Right. So this
Yeah.
is the one you're referring to, the Ings. Whoops, I don't have my pointer on here. So this is Nowland Boulevard here, and his was a bit of a unique situation in this case, because these 2 new lots both had frontage on Nowland Boulevard.
Right.
So what we did here was we planned out where that road would go and how these lots would fit into it, but this whole back piece was platted as an outlot.
And they would have to come back in for,
And so before they can do anything on the outlot, right, they have to come back in.
yeah,
Yeah.
And then that would have to be paved.
yes, then that would have to be
Right.
paved, yes.
If you take a look across the road from me, what the township did is said, just give them 3 long flag lots.
That was
So there's
forever.
three driveways right next to each other, all
Exactly.
gravel.
Yeah,
Because they didn't want a cul-de-sac they had to maintain.
right.
But poor delivery people or fire people can never figure out which is which there.
Right.
And a couple of them can't use it in the wintertime because it turns to muck.
Right.
So they park on the road and walk all the way back. It was short-sighted, but the city didn't want to add another road.
Right.
I
So
mean,
we're not doing that anymore, but it comes to these where
Well-
it's a family situation, and they're saying 2 or 3 of us are gonna live back there, do we really need to blacktop all the way out to 5, if they're just us using it like a driveway like we always have?
I mean, I hate to back the truck up too, but we have the same situation, but we don't have only but 1 house on ours. And we had to designate our outlot to the city, but they didn't, there's nobody taking care of it other than us.
Well, you dedicated 66 feet.
80.
part of the way, or 80.
80?
And, right, and part of the agreement was for you to maintain that until such time as the city accepts it as a public
But it's 2
road.
outlots. I mean, it's 2 lots.
Your property, there, you mean the
No,
one that
the
is
whole entire
adjacent
thing
to-
was 2 lots. The one parcel has road frontage on the main road, and then ours is the outlot that we maintain as our driveway.
Yep. Well, apparently you didn't have enough frontage for your lot, otherwise.
No, we didn't.
Yeah,
No, there wasn't, if we were to divide what was currently there, neither lot would have had enough road frontage.
yeah.
So that's why.
Yeah,
we-
we've started in your situation too with some existing, the one house up by the road took up some of the frontage and, yeah, all the situations are a little different, but different.
That's what happens though, if you came in and you strictly enforced this, Kelly wouldn't have been able to do what she ended up doing.
I wouldn't have been able to have the flag lot unless I asked for
Right.
variance, which even then, I probably, well,
Even
who
if-
knows?
even
I
if
would have
you-
had to ask for the variance for a flag lot.
Right.
And then it would have been a driveway, and I probably wouldn't have had to designate an outlot to the city for future use possibly, if that's really, really what was gonna go down. If I owned the whole entire thing and just wanted to split it and use it one lot here and one lot there because it had road frontage.
Right.
I mean, we're talking
I
crazy
say if a
numbers.
road does go in, it's gonna be built to standards now.
Yeah.
The question
and-
is, when do we mandate
Paving.
that it has to go in?
Well,
And how can we do it in a consistent manner, so somebody doesn't come back later and say you were being arbitrary and capricious?
Well-
You made them do it, you made me do it, but not them.
well, currently now, the 2 lots that were there are now owned under our family, so it's
Yeah,
under one
I'm
family.
saying though, on these
But I'm just
future
saying that-
decisions, like the one that's gonna come up next month.
Yep,
do
and
they
if you
have to
guys
do
would have
the
mandated
paved
us to,
cul-de-sac all the way back?
and if you would have, forced us to put a driveway in, or tarred driveway in to a certain point, that would be really kind of silly.
It's
No,
a
that's like-
gravel road already.
Yeah, it is a gravel, and that's where it's
That's what
like,
we just did to Halsey's last fall.
They did the same thing. I mean, they platted the right of way like you did.
yep,
But they're required, we let them put the driveway within the right of way until such time as
But
the
they're
street is
blacktopping the
paved.
cul-de-sac.
Right.
But they're paving it.
So what?
aren't they
when do
off
we
a
do
paved
this?
road?
Same deal, really.
They
They're
are.
coming in off of a
They put the,
paved cul-de-sac right now.
No, but their road is, the road that they're attaching to is paved.
oh, yes.
Yes,
Driscoll
it's
is, right.
exactly, yes.
Right, yeah, yeah.
No.
I mean, that can be if we're looking at a reasonable change, it seems reasonable to me if you're splitting up. You could say, if it's a certain number of lots that you're subdividing, if it's less than a certain number, it may not be paved. If it's coming onto a paved road, or if it's coming onto an unpaved road, it seems odd to me that you would come off a gravel road into a paved area, but maybe that's just me, I don't know.
I agreed with that, like.
I'm just
it
looking at
I
seems
like-
think the other point though, that Liz was saying, you're doing 2 lots now, but it's got the
Potential.
potential to go bigger, then somebody else is gonna get stuck with
They're,
all of that later.
well, who's gonna
Right,
sell it?
exactly.
So if it's gonna be 2 lots, the people that own those lots are gonna be the ones to sell. They're the ones that are gonna be the burden of,
Well, maybe, but in Wholesome's case, it's not gonna be, because somebody else is gonna buy. the
and
front.
he's transferred, but he's putting that money into the house that he's gonna sell anyways, or the land that he's gonna sell. He's gonna,
No, but
it all
I'm saying
washes
whoever
out.
buys the 30 up front,
yes.
if he didn't do that, if we didn't make him do the cul-de-sac, or if he didn't willingly do the cul-de-sac, they would have had to pick up the cul-de-sac in front of his property when they go to develop.
Mhm.
By doing this, he's doing the part that fronts his property.
Up to the
And then somebody,
development.
if they want to split the 30, can pick that up,
Yes.
but not have to pick up his portion. And that's gonna be the question. Next month, when this comes up, if the Lesticos go from a paved to the end of that short cul-de-sac, and then the driveways come off of that,
That, yeah.
that seems probably reasonable. And then if they want to, or somebody else wants to develop that back portion later, they can pick up what's adding to that. But if they don't have to do that, and they sell that off to somebody else in the back,
He's gotta do the
then
whole
they've gotta
thing.
pick up everything out to 5.
And
And
that
that's
seems,
where it
that's,
gets to be a problem.
yeah, and that shouldn't be the way it is.
Now, on the other hand, like you were saying that taking a blacktop out to a gravel road,
It is silly.
you know, if it's not a common road at that point.
Exactly.
So that's, I think, where we need to tweak this, saying that's where common sense comes in here. If you're going blacktop to blacktop, then you are responsible for the cul-de-sac, and further development is responsible to tie into that.
Yes.
If you're going from a gravel to a gravel, and it's not a used road, but I think we need to capture it in such a way so it's specific and repeatable, so somebody doesn't come
Right.
back later and
You need
claim
to,
this. that
we
we're
need to
being
take out
arbitrary.
that statement, it's, you know, at the discretion of the city council, unanimous to change whatever
Well,
they want
judges
to.
love those.
I mean, that seems, but like when they develop the land off of Ingen or whatever, that's a gravel road, if they do some development out there, I mean, it would, unless they choose, you know, I doubt we're gonna pave Ingen, but, I could be wrong, but it would seem odd that you'd have to come up with a paved cul-de-sac off that road to come onto Ingen.
Yeah, that would be kind of like, oh, what is that development? Rhinestone and 189th and Peridot, that mess over there where there's tar, gravel, tar.
Well, see, the intention was there with the development, was to take it all the way back out to 5.
Yeah.
Make it U-shaped, and instead, the
got
township
an
said, no,
exit.
let's just go north on Rhinestone instead. And it's like, okay, now you got gravel here, and you didn't bring it all the way out to the blacktop, which didn't make any sense when you had a development going in. It should be blacktop to blacktop.
Was it
And I remember
two?
being at the meeting, because they said, well, nobody ever drive on 189th, it's gravel. They'll just drive down through the neighborhood
And they
and come
won't.
out south. And I said, not if they're going north. And matter of fact, even if they're going south, they don't go through the neighborhood, they come on 189th.
Yep, sure, yep.
See, the
So,
original
is
plan
the action
was to
for,
cross that creek right there to
Is
get-
the action for Liz to draft a few of those proposals,
They
and then we
promised.
can review them?
And then
Flemish said we, it was.
How does that
up to the
work?
city.
Well,
We should give you something to do.
Well, probably,
So I'm looking at, we should have some action out of this if we brought it up and discussed it for a half hour, 30 minutes, or a half hour, 40 minutes. It's like, do we make some reasonable adjustments to, if it's gravel to gravel, we can make a change?
can you go back to that one with,
The other one.
Ings?
subdivision?
Yeah, I
This
just
one?
wanna, yes. Okay.
So see, they had frontage here on Nowden Boulevard.
No, and I'm just looking at how we we made it as an outlaw.
This is an outlaw, right, so they can't do anything with this. You can't ever have a structure on an outlaw
Until they come in for subdivision.
until they replat it, right?
Okay,
Yeah, and that's
So-
actually a pretty good way to go.
then that's,
So they would come up with
they can,
potentially a cul-de-sac on that outlot, and then they would, or a street all the way through there, however they wanna do it.
okay, so next
Right,
question.
they had actually a concept plan to show how it would be at build-out, and then that's how we kinda determined where this would end
Okay.
up.
But they can still farm that.
Yes, they can
Use it because they own it,
Right,
but they can't put a structure on it.
correct.
Or a driveway or whatever, okay. So, have the, I mean, that is a way to hurdle their
Only if you got- those
so-called
both have-
roads.
Only if
Those
you
both
got
have
frontage
driveways
road,
on.
only if you got frontage road, if.
Yes, that one's got roads right out to County Road 5, or driveways right out to County Road
See, on
5.
the
Lesko
Lesticos,
They
they
need
won't
that,
have that.
they need
Yeah.
that road to
They
get to
need
there.
the frontage,
Yes,
right.
they do.
That's the difference.
And the same way with your
The
property.
size of that, I'm just saying, the size of the property that's out there, that is, it seems logical to put the road in with a cul-de-sac because it's so easy to subdivide after the fact and develop. It seems logical. I know it doesn't sound palatable, and it sounds expensive.
Maybe the best thing to do is for the group to just make a motion to send this to council and get their direction as to whether they want any ordinance changes now or just wait or have them think. We haven't had any direction from council yet, but I just kind of.
Has the road and bridge even looked at this?
No, we don't,
they don't have,
we don't even meet anymore, really.
So,
There wasn't a lot productive that came out of that.
okay. That's baffling.
But, well, except for this really wouldn't be in their purview. This has more to do with the plating. They were really dealing just with road surfacing and putting together the 5-year plan.
So what's the right direction here? Is it, should this planning and zoning bring a recommendation to the city council that says, hey, we looked at these ordinances based on what we see happening in the community and what we've heard in the last couple of years with some coming on, with some of the last few developments, here's our recommendations for clarity. And then those guys can vote it up or down or come back and make some recommendations back to us. But I kind of feel like we're kicking the can if we just say, you guys think about it and tell us. So if you want us to make a call, I would say, put it on the agenda next time to let's mark up the rules or mark up the ordinances and then send those to city council and see, for their buy-in on it. That would be my recommendation.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
that is how it works in a lot of communities, and now then I feel like the council likes to make the direction, so I'd push it back to the council, since that's been our policy.
Well, we are the recommending body,
And
are we
then
supposed to
it would still
recommend?
have to come through you.
But that's what I'm saying.
Public hearing and everything.
I agree that he's got a great point. We should be thinking of ideas, and they can too. They can even throw ideas towards us. But we all should definitely talk it over and be the recommending body for what the council completely does decide. They
Barry,
don't-
you're the liaison, how you want to handle it?
Yeah.
There was a time when the council just said, you guys draft it, and then we worked together and brought it back. But, you know,
And that seems logical, because you get all views of it, all different angles.
Well,
Or
again,
we can
you
put
know,
it-
I agree, it's a recommending body. I think it's important to know what the questions are and then address it that way. Kind of the way it came up tonight, it wasn't on the agenda, we didn't have anything to work with, and we've got an ordinance and I don't know if the other's policy ordinance that came up there. Don't really have a lot of facts, but it makes sense. The way we've tried to run commissions is gather the facts, make recommendations saying, here's the problem, here's some solutions that we recommend, and send it forth as a recommendation to council. So I agree, identify the problem, research it, come up with a reasonable solution and recommend it. Now again, and it can work the other way, as council sees something, this has been brought to our attention, send that to the commission to research and figure it out. But in this case, it seems like a lot of extra work to say, we've identified this, let's send it to the council and see if they want us to talk about it. So it's been identified, we know it's gonna come up as a question, start the research and make a recommendation. If the council wants to tweak that recommendation or take it as is, that's it.
Correct.
But again, it kind of gets back to the point where some of our issues have been, here's a problem, you guys figure it out. Well, then why do we need a committee or something, instead of just dropping it in our lap?
Exactly.
right.
So team, how do we want to move forward?
I would just recommend at this point, since the planner brought it up, to give you guys the information so you can discuss it. Because right now, you can't really go forward with it. I think it's been good that she's brought up some potential opportunities to address this in the immediate future. So identify the problem and then research a solution for a recommendation. And in this case, you know, there's an ordinance that says one thing, and out that says we can do other things if we so choose.
Right.
And you realize there's some cases where that's necessary, but you want it to be less than just capricious. Here's the guidelines that you would do something less than this. If there's a chance that lot's gonna develop further, you probably wanna nail down that cul-de-sac now. So how do you put that in a recommendation?
So Liz, how do we leverage your
Well, why don't we start by just,
What I would recommend for you to consider, and you guys decide what you want to do, but recommend a request to the council to direct Liz to do that, so at your next meeting you have the right information. So what you're asking for from Liz, recommend that the council direct her to do that, because the other issue comes in when we start assigning contractors, and then they get the bills, and somebody said, how do we get down here with this? He went back and the council directed it. So what do you want from Liz? And make that recommendation to council, and it'll be delivered to you before the next meeting. If Liz can put it together then. Does that make sense? So what are you hoping Liz gives to you? Recommend that we direct her accordingly. And then if the council has anything they want to add at that time, they can say, also do this or this, and you'll get that before the next meeting. If that makes sense.
In other words, you're looking for a motion, to make a motion to make a request to the city council for this, more or less bringing the subdivision ordinance up to date.
possible ordinance amendments related to, street construction.
Street construction.
And then we would direct Liz accordingly, and she would provide that information to the commission for your next meeting. So Jason, you want to make that motion?
Yeah, so let's make a motion to have Liz review the ordinance regarding street construction. And provide possible alternatives to our current ordinances.
That's a request to the council.
Correct. I get a second?
Second. Any further discussion? We'll vote on it. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Perfect.
Thank you, I know that I just sprung that on y'all. Okay, so updates. The comprehensive plan made it through what the Met Council calls the CDC meeting, the Community Development and something meeting. Anyway, the formal decision on our comp plan is gonna be this week. We fully expect that to be approved, so then council would either approve that in March or April. And then we would move forward with establishing the new RRT district, which is the transition area down in the settlement area in the southeast corner. And so we're moving forward there, and then we can make the final version of the comp plan available to everybody and put that on the website. We are scheduling a code enforcement workshop meeting to tweak those procedures a little bit as well, and to try to get our current list of properties that have had complaints in the past or that have violations, to try to get those resolved in a expeditious manner. And the Thompson Building, which burned on Boss Street, they applied for a new building permit. And I believe that was just recently issued, so they will be constructing that building under the non-conforming rule law. If they apply for a building permit within 180 days of the fire, they can construct the building exactly how it was, and that's what they plan to do. It can be a different color, and they can move window and door openings, but the exact size and height will be the same as it was. If they applied for what they have there now under today's ordinance, they would not be able to achieve what they have going, so it was definitely to their benefit to proceed in this manner, and we notified them of that, which, to allow them to do that as a good community business partner. Item D, MBI that you approved last year should be beginning construction there on Old Viking Boulevard.
That's on the corner right here?
Right, yep, right there.
Perfect.
They should get going here rather soon. And a couple of existing businesses in our industrial park the concrete, TR Concrete, as well as Dock and Door, are looking at building additions. The one subdivision that came through as a concept plan to you on Pinnaker Road, the real wooded 40-acre piece, 7,300 Pinnaker. They're not gonna fully develop that, it's changing hands, and it looks like either a 2 or 3 lot split for that parcel coming up.
Where's that at?
It's up there around the curve,
Okay.
Norris Lake and Pinnaker, yeah.
second curve.
Second.
Yeah,
What?
it'd be in the second curve.
Oh, second. And then, possible development concept for land behind the mini storage on Viking, the new mini storage. And,
Does the land behind there go all the way up to 190th, or is it not?
no, when he
So it'd
split,
still come out the same road that they're on, or the driveway that they put in?
well, when he split that land, the one condition is that he provide street access.
Okay.
So that's kind of up for debate as to whether that will even work there at this point. I mean, we'd like to get a street through to Iguana to start what would be in the long term, an east-west street
Yeah.
there. But we don't have that yet, so we will see. It might not even be possible. And then a couple new houses going up, one on Merle's Lane on a lot that's been vacant for a long time, and Mr. Perkins building a house on 223rd.
Just one on Merle's Lane,
Just one right now on Merle's Lane.
and make sure Shane knows that. Because we got a road project going through there. Merle's Lane's on a road project, so
Oh,
that
yes.
changes our numbers.
Oh, yes, okay.
Make sure Shane knows.
Well, it was a lot though, so he's probably got it in his lot count for an assessment.
Is that the one close to Lithium, or what is it up there?
Because it's a lot of record now. I'll check with him.
Check with him just to make sure.
The one that's closest
All right.
to the east, or to the one on the west, who yet they haven't built on?
I don't know. I just,
I think that's it.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay,
I'd bail that
I
hay.
guess there's nothing else. Somebody want to make that?
That's good.
motion to adjourn?
One time I
Okay.
was on, Ditch
So,
was here and I was
Homer's
over
making a
here.
motion to adjourn. Anybody second?
Fell out, and hit the ground, and the tree over there was on.
Sister.
Oh, I have a question.
Second it.
I wanted to know if we were aware that Kristen was resigned and if we were gonna fulfill that spot. I just wanted to know.
Oh, she resigned, I think it was in October, November last year.
Okay.
And, you know that?
Who did?
Kristen,
No one.
I didn't know she resigned.
How come everybody's leaves?
Huh?
How come everybody's like, oh, her,
Because you don't
okay.
shower enough, okay?
Right. Why can't
But
you
is
be
the
nice?
position being refilled is the question.
There's applications, and
Okay.
it's open, so.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
She was too worried about looking in everybody's damn sheds, what they had in them.
Yeah, she wanted to, I know.